Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Regional Development Assessment Panel meeting of the 16th of April. My name's Tony Arias. I'll introduce the other panel members. To my left, Lindsay Baxter, who's the Deputy Presiding Member. From the Shire of Capel, Councillor John Ferguson, who's further to the left, and we have Councillor Peter McCleary, also a local government member from the Shire of Capel. DAP Secretary, we have Ashley Kelly, who's doing Minute Secretary, and Zoe Henry, who's Governance. Members, with those preliminaries, I'm going to formally declare the meeting open at 1:01 and acknowledge the traditional owners and pay respects to elders past and present of the land on which the meeting is being held. The meeting will be run in accordance with DAP Standing Orders 2024. Panel members may refer to technical devices through the meeting to assist them in considering information. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the regulations. Item 2, apologies. We have an apology from John Syme, Specialist Member, and Paul Katsoglo, also Specialist Member. Item 3, members on leave of absence, we have Neil. Item 4, noting of minutes, just for information that notes of previous meetings are on the DAP website. We move to part B of the agenda, which is Shire of Capel. Item 1 is declarations of due consideration. Members, I need you to confirm that you are familiar with the documentation provided in part B of the agenda and part B additional information. There's been quite a bit that has been provided. If you're able to confirm that by raising your hand, would duly declared. Thanks, members. Item 2, disclosures of interest. We have had a disclosure of interest impartiality from Mr. Katsoglo. Mr. Katsoglo declared that he is familiar with 2 directors of Element, the applicant in this application, and has professional associations and friendships with these directors. He has chosen to withdraw from today's meeting. The basis of his decision was not that he was unable to determine the matter on merits, but to avoid any perception of the decision-making process and its integrity. I have accepted Mr. Katsoglo's declaration, and I respect and acknowledge his reasons for withdrawing from the meeting. Members, are there any other declarations of interest? No?
Excuse me. Impartiality interest.
Yes.
In that I have received, as a councillor, emails from some of the respondents. I've not had conversations with them, and the content of those emails is in the business papers that we have today.
Okay. Councillor Ferguson, before I respond, Councillor McCleary?
Well, I have a similar impartiality declaration in that we receive emails from some of the people that are presenting today, but that's now formed part of the meeting. They've put submissions in about their topics, and I note that all of them are presenting. I haven't had any conversations with them prior to the meeting.
Thank you, councillors. Just if you're both able to confirm that you can consider this matter with the impartiality.
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Okay. And the final matter in terms of disclosures of interest, the standing orders require declarations where items have gone to council and a decision's been made. I'm not aware whether this application's actually gone to council formally.
No, this item's gone. It's had, I think, about 3 sessions in DAP. The first one, I think, was postponed. Then the second one, where I couldn't attend, the decision was made to refuse, and now there's this one. So they're the only things that have come through council.
Okay, in which case, no other declarations are required. Thank you. And can I ask you both, following the meeting, just to make those declarations in writing? And I have considered both those declarations, and given your statements about being able to deal with the matter with impartiality, and that you've had no direct conversations with any of the submitters, I'm happy for you to participate in the meeting and vote on the item. Item 3, Form 1 applications, we have nil. Item 4, Form 2 applications, we have nil. Item 5, Section 31 SAT reconsiderations. We do have that, an extractive industry development proposal on lot 148 Skippings Road, Buena. We will move to presentations, and we've got a number of presentations. The standing orders allow for 3-minute presentations, and given we've got a number of them, I will remind presenters when 3 minutes is up. I have agreed to an extension to 5 minutes for Daniel Lewis in his presentation, and in the spirit of equity, I'm prepared to offer one of the other submitters who are opposed to the development an additional 2 minutes. So, Mr. Horsfall, whether you would like that additional 2 minutes, or Donna Brown, whether that, I'm happy for either of you to make a decision about who would require those 2 minutes.
Yeah, right. In my case, I can wrap this up in 3 minutes. I'm okay.
All right. Well, in which case, Donna, I'm prepared to offer you those additional 2 minutes if you require it.
Thank you. That's appreciated.
Okay. All right. So, just the other part of the presentation, given presenters have only got 3 minutes, I'd encourage you to focus on the key aspects of the presentation. So, first presenter, Robert Horsfall.
Yeah, good afternoon. To give you some background on this EIL issue, 20 years ago, my wife and I bought a lifestyle property in Brookdale Road, Buena. Brookdale Road properties are all rural properties consisting of cattle and equestrian blocks. We did this to develop it into an equestrian block to breed and train horses on site for the use of my wife and daughter's equestrian sports. This property is located on a hill made up of high quality white silica sand, which is hard to revegetate. We look forward to eventually retiring to the idyllic retreat in a quiet rural block in the country after living in Perth. We have now retired and thought we had achieved our goals when my neighbour, who owns the adjacent hill, decided to undertake an EIL on his property. They are attempting to do this without using a buffer zone to protect our property from the noise and silica dust produced from such an undertaking. Nearby residents are also concerned by this. The reason for their concern is that we live in a high wind zone, which is even worse when you live on the hill. Winds can exceed 100 kilometres an hour at times, causing damage to trees. This EIL extends to within 136 metres of our home. 4 members of my family suffer from asthma attacks brought on by dust and pollen, and would be severely affected by dust blowing across to our home. They intend to build a silica sand bund 130 metres from our water storage plant, and we are concerned the sand will contaminate our only source of water. We do not have access to scheme water at this location. My grandchildren need one-on-one schooling. The property has schooling in coordination with the education department. We're worried about noise, and we're worried about truck movements, heavy machinery movements. The EIL has no plan for drainage. Possible health risks of silicosis and asthma attacks due to carcinogenic nature of the silica sand. This EIL will make our property unviable as it was purchased. The Human Rights Act of 2022, of which Australia is a contributory, clearly states that must not violate the right to breathe clean air to their own actions and must protect the right from being violated by third-party properties, especially businesses. This also includes the basic human right to clean and uncontaminated water. This EIL clearly violates our basic human rights. I thank you for your time in this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Horsfall. Members, questions? Thank you for your presentation. The next presenter, Penny David.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen, so hopefully this works. Is that working for everyone?
It did work for a minute.
Okay. Thank you for allowing me to present today. I will be referring to the Acoustic Assessment Revision 4 provided by Herring Storer Acoustics and the Dust Management Plan Revision 1 prepared by MBS Environmental. These plans need to be read together as they are not mutually exclusive. While I'm speaking, I'll be showing a series of photographs and a video taken this month at a sand mine in the Shire of Capel in Gwyndiniup, 9 kilometres from the proposed sand mine. The acoustic assessment says that earth bunds are required to ensure attention of noise in the direction of the receiver. The dust management plan states that a continuous earthen bund of 2 metre high topsoil will be placed in various places and a similar temporary bund will be placed in other places. In the acoustic assessment, table 6.2 on page 7, the wind speed of 4 metres per second has been used in calculating how sound will travel. 4 metres per second is equivalent to 14.4 kilometres per hour. The dust management plan states on page 8 that prevailing summer winds are morning easterlies and afternoon westerlies. The rows of wind direction used in the same report is in Bunbury and indicates that 20 to 30% of the time the wind is blowing at a speed of 20 to 40 kilometres per hour in the morning and afternoons. The entire basis on which the 2 metre high topsoil bund prevents noise travelling is incorrect. The proposed bund cannot stop noise travelling at the wind speeds on this site. It's also normal for maximum stockpile heights to be stated, but there is nothing in the submission or Capel Shire's conditions. The dust management plan reads as if works can commence once the bund has been constructed, not when it's been seeded and the seed has grown. The bund, along with the stockpiles of sand on site, will be the main source of dust and windborne sand. It doesn't matter that the excavation of Section A will commence in the winter months. The statement is made on the assumption that it will be raining, yet there's no data to confirm that in these months that there's sufficient rainfall to ensure that the topsoil bund will remain wet and prevent the bund itself from blowing away and creating further dust. I would like for you to now watch this video taken this month at the same location as the photos you've seen, 9 kilometres from the proposed mine. Watching it, it's obvious that the acoustic assessment and dust management plan are grossly inadequate and have been prepared to tick the box, and they have not even bothered to use correct input information. Why has the sand not been tested for silica content? What is the matrix of this sand that's going to be blowing everywhere, unrestrained and falling into our drinking water tanks? Why has testing been avoided? And why has the applicant proposed to remove Capel Shire Council Clause 17 relating to dust management, compliance and best practice? I can only assume that the applicant knows that if this project goes ahead, we will see dust blowing everywhere exactly like this video, and they will be unable to comply with the requirements of Section 17. I object to this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. David, you're right on 3 minutes. So how long is the video?
26 seconds.
Okay, please play it.
Did it play?
No.
No.
Oh. Am I sharing?
No.
Oh.
Okay. We see your photos now.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Is it playing?
No, it's not.
It's playing on my end. Okay. Are you able to see that?
No, can't see anything. Ms. David, what I'm going to suggest, we're going to move to questions.
Yep.
While we listen to the next presenter, if you can get that, I'll allow you to show it.
Oh, thanks.
We'll go to questions.
Otherwise, I could email it to Ashley and then you could play it at your end if it.
See how you go. So questions, members? Just technical question. You indicated that in your view, the assumptions around strength of the wind, prevailing winds was incorrect. On what basis do you draw that conclusion?
Okay, so there's two lots of wind data that have been used. One is EPA standard of 4 meters per second, which is 14.4 kilometers per hour. And that's a standard that is given for this area. Additionally, the rows of wind direction that's been supplied in the dust management plan is from Bunbury, and Bunbury is about, it's more than 15 kilometres away from this site. So neither of those baselines that have been used to compare or been used to design this bund are relevant to the actual site. So whilst they've done existing baseline noise monitoring to get a baseline noise to demonstrate noise compliance, at the same time there was no baseline wind monitoring done to be able to properly show that this the bunds and the other proposed actions actually fit for purpose on this site.
Okay, so in terms of the technical response, you're saying that the EPA guidelines are not relevant? Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm saying that the EPA guidelines at this location do not reflect what the current situation is. Yes. So the guidelines are very broad brush and they don't specifically, like Bob has referred to his property being on a hill, and obviously the sand mine is on the hill also, and weather conditions are different depending on the topography.
Okay, but right, but that's your opinion. You haven't done modelling to be able to actually say that it's incorrect?
Correct, and neither has the applicant.
Okay, that's fine. Members, any other questions? Ms. David, as I said, if you're able to get the video going, happy to show it. Otherwise, recognise time, so we may just have to miss out. Donna,
Hello.
I'm happy for you to commence your presentation. And as I said, you've provided a very detailed presentation which has been provided to members. I have extended your presentation to 5 minutes, but 5 minutes goes quickly. So I will remind you when 5 minutes is up.
Thank you. I also will have that video if there's time at the end of the presentation, if my share screen is working. Okay. I'm hoping, I know Penny had photos for share screen, so I'd just like a minute to get my presentation shared, if people could confirm that's...
Yep.
People are seeing that. So thank you. So people are viewing the presentation online?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to again provide comments to JDAP panel. I remain of the same opinion as last August that this application should be refused as the changes made are not significant enough to warrant approval. Well, that's not. I'll just. Right. The setbacks to the nearest home is still unacceptable, even with the revised application. And some new information also, there are 0 setbacks to watercourses, and this is unacceptable when the state planning policy and our gazetted laws say that it must be a 50-metre buffer zone. The EIL does not meet the values of proper planning. This EIL is not compatible with the operation. It is not a compatible operation with a locality. It will permanently and unacceptably affect the amenity of the area. Under the TPS 8 for the Shire, it does not meet any of the 5 listed objectives for use of the land. It has insufficient and inaccurate records, being the wind data from Bunbury. Numerous documents are only to be provided if the EIL is approved and will be submitted to the Shire, quote, for approval prior to commencement. Extra information submitted to the JDAP. Shire staff advised on page 18 of the revised application section G, the proposal satisfies the requirements of our Town Planning Scheme 8. In what way? I cannot align even one of the 5 rule objectives to this application. It does not satisfy the requirements, not even one, and is in fact incompatible. The outstanding documents yet to be approved. There's a number of strategic documents not provided for consideration to this panel, but it says prior to commencement of the development, they shall be submitted for approval to the Shire. And the applicant has in fact today put in their submission that they intend to take out the details of clause 17, where it states the sand must be tested. And they've now said that's an error, an administrative error, and that matter now is to be just submitted to the Shire later for approval. We're very concerned about the forthcoming presentation where they're trying to take away condition 17 and the many aspects that are meant to be set out in that. Condition number 14, the water. Water requirements have not been quantified. Where is the secure water source to come from? And why has quantity and sourcing of water not been specified during the application process? Refusal to test sand. I'm at a loss to understand why we're at this point after JDAP hearing, 2 SAP mediation hearings, and here we are again today expressing serious health concerns, and dust monitoring and testing, or the dust testing, still has not been requested or put forward. The timeline for the testing of the sand is unacceptable, as an adverse finding after, if it was to be awarded, an adverse finding may severely impact those who reside in the vicinity of this development. If any testing has been undertaken, specifically, what is the silica content of the sand at Skippings Road? Only hours before the meeting today, we saw online that they're going to take away condition 17. The main reasons the applicant was granted hearings after refusal in August, twice at the SAP for mediation, and now this second JDAP hearing was to cover dust and noise, and the applicant is asking to take away the dust conditions. Now the applicant is asking for this to be implemented to the satisfaction of the Shire of Capel, and I find this late change unacceptable. On page 13, the Shire staff state, the amended proposal has not been re-advertised as it did not substantially change the extraction area. So they chose not to re-advertise because it was not substantial changes. The revisions focus mainly on dust and noise, but these are not the only issues. If there are no substantial changes, as the Shire staff state, why are we even here? These significant issues cannot be fixed, and refusal today, please, should be the only way forward. There'll be a loss of amenities. Adjoining landowners will suffer the permanent and stressful loss of their rightful enjoyment to their rural properties to which they're entitled. This proposed EIL is simply too close to nearby homes and rural properties. The sand excavation will be unpleasant for the animals too. Did the Shire staff reassess this application with a sensitive...
Ms.
Yes?
Brown, your 5 minutes is up, so
Right.
can you please conclude?
I will. Just down the bottom there, if I've just got 2 pictures, if lot 379, if there is a buffer distance of 1,000 metres imposed as per planning, that distance goes right through the applicant's extraction site, even if it's at 500 metres. So I'll just go to the end. I have just quoted the 10th commandment. The applicant is unjustly desiring to conduct an activity on their own land, which will directly and knowingly impact on the properties owned by others. It's that simple. And my conclusions there, many people are opposed to the project. They've resided in this area to enjoy the tranquility. Today, I'm urging the JDAP assessment panel to again, please refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Would you like to try and share that video?
I will. I'll just, thank you. I just have to work out how to share that. Right, I'll just click on.
Right, thank you, Ms. Brown. That did work. We'll go to questions. Members, questions of Ms. Brown?
Yes, if I may, Mr. President.
Councillor Ferguson.
Councillor John Ferguson, Capel, Shire. I'm trying to reconcile in the material I've seen this distance issue from the adjoining property. Is it lot 379? And the fact that in some of the state government instrumentality documents, it quotes preferred distance of 5 to 1,000 metres, and yet we've got something of 130 metres. So I'm trying to reconcile that in my mind. Have you any comment in respect to that as to how that has been managed to be overcome? That is the preference stated in the state government's instrumentality documents.
Councillor Ferguson, is that not directed? Are you directing that to me? Like I've just concluded my presentation. Were there any questions for me, or we're moving on?
That was a question for you. My question is, how do you think they've been able to reconcile that difference?
Right, well, they can't. In America, the minimum distance allowed for this type of operation is 1.5 kilometres. And I believe today, if it is approved, it dangerously sets a precedent that any low sandhill in our Shire can be mined right up to anybody's home. We're distraught about this. It's an unacceptable distance to both Bob and Penny's home. I can't imagine if it was over my back fence that my horses, my rainwater, and I would be consuming the water. I've got a health challenge. I'm about to install a whole of house water filter for $4,000 to take out every last damaged particle. That's on my land, not on the people that are 136 metres from this proposed site. It's unacceptable. It's an unacceptable health risk that's been continually ignored. I do not understand why someone hasn't simply requested this company to provide the results of sand testing.
Thank you.
We're upset. We've asked questions repeatedly in August. 2nd of August was the first JDAP hearing. 13th of October was...
Sorry, I think you've responded to the question.
Thank you.
Members, other questions? Ms. Brown, just you made a comment about condition 17 and condition 14 about
yes.
The work commencing without those matters being clarified. Those conditions are to be undertaken prior to commencement of work. So do you understand the time, the phasing of the time? Those conditions?
I do. I'm just going to a page that I didn't present due to time. I'm concerned that there's so many policies that are being left for consideration after a decision today. There's 5 matters that are going to be left for further consideration to the satisfaction of the Shire. Our concern is the Shire staff have recommended approval with a 0 setback to watercourses.
Sorry, Ms. Brown, that's not the question. The question was whether you understood the timing requirement of the conditions. If those conditions are imposed, they need to be satisfied prior to commencement of works.
Yes, I understand, but also I did email the DAP today that the applicant intends to take away condition to take out all of those points in condition 17 and replace it with a generic comment.
Okay, that's a matter for the applicant to present. The conditions are a matter for the panel. But yes, I understand your concern. Members, any other questions? Not, Ms. Brown, thank you for your presentation. The next presenter is Daniel Lewis. Daniel, you have 5 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and panel members, for the opportunity to present on this item this afternoon. Given we have a new panel than the one that issued the previous decision in August, I'd like to firstly run through the various elements of the development proposal. Simply, the proposed operations are designed to operate 8 sequential stages for approximately 200,000 tonnes of sand. The minimum distance, as previously stated, to the nearest dwelling is 135.7 metres. Haulage will remain down Skippings Road. Notably, the change that's come back to the panel this afternoon is particularly within stage 2. Our client is proposing to operate only within a period of May to October, within the first year of operations, and for stages 1 and 2 to be completed within the first year. This is to provide the greatest level of separation to the dwelling. We acknowledge the panel's previous reasons for refusal as listed. However, following mediation and further assessment by the Shire, we consider the additional information provided and associated management measures appropriate to address the reasons for refusal, especially concerns held by the panel regarding the rural amenity of the locality. On the request of the presiding member, Herring Storer have completed the ambient noise modelling on the subject site for a period of 7 days. Ambient noise levels on the subject site fluctuate between 35 and 45 decibels during the proposed hours of operations. Similarly, noise from operations within stage 2, considered the worst case scenario, are modelled to operate at between 40 and 45 decibels, complying with environmental noise regulations. It is also possible in certain situations, such as where there's an increased wind speed, for operations to be masked by ambient noise levels, as was recorded during various parts of the day. Paul Daly of Herring Storer is online and happy to answer any questions the panel may have in this regard. Dust has been raised as a particular concern for nearby landowners west of stage 2. These concerns should, however, be put in the context of the neighbouring properties. The fenced horse paddocks on the neighbouring property contain no pasture cover and surround the house on 3 sides with an open area open to the strong westerly sea breeze exceeding 2 hectares. Should potential dust impacts be of such a health concern as claimed, it would be reasonable for the panel to expect appropriate measures being put in place to mitigate any potential dust. However, no such management occurs and wind-blown dust can be observed during this past summer. BCP, however, is seeking to propose a dust management plan which ensures no dust crosses the lot boundary during the AM prevailing easterly wind, as by ensuring stage 2 operations are completed only within winter and are complete within the first year of operations. The acoustic bund, which contains all the topsoil from stage 2, will be watered down regularly by the water truck on site to ensure an establishment of pasture growth. Hydro mulch is also proposed within the dust management plan to be applied if there's no germination of topsoil. With a water truck on site during every day of operations, we believe there is a low risk of any potential dust generation within stage 2, considered the worst case scenario, let alone dust crossing the boundary and causing any nuisance. In the event any dust is observed during excavation, it is standard practice for the water truck to drive past and soak the active extraction area. The measures listed within the dust management plan are considered best practice to manage dust. I'll just touch through the last couple of things briefly. SJ Traffic has prepared a traffic management plan, which has been provided to the panel, particularly to address the concerns that were raised surrounding conflicts during haulage on Skippings Road. The traffic management plan ensures during haulage that haulage will be conducted in a safe manner. A third year of groundwater monitoring was also conducted in the winter period of 2023. However, due to a technical fault, we cannot reliably use this data. And so we, along with DWR, are comfortable that we can proceed and maintain a 0.8 metre separation to groundwater. The previous panel also raised concerns surrounding the value of the multiple use wetlands mapped across the site. MBS Environmental and DWER have concluded that due to operations maintaining a separation to groundwater, operations will not impact the degraded value of the wetland and associated watercourses. Kirsty Cowan of MBS is online and happy to answer any questions in this regard. As we conclude, in considering the recommendation of the RAR prepared by the Shire, we support the recommendation for approval, subject to a minor change to Condition 17. The wording from Condition 17 was actually a carryover from the previous RAR, but does not recognise the updated dust management plan and its provisions, which was prepared collaboratively through mediation. This is an unfortunate oversight and one we have reached an agreement with the Shire officers on following the release of the agenda. We request the modified condition wording previously circulated be supported by the panel. And finally, in closing, the reasons for refusal previously imposed by the RDAP are reasonably satisfied through various conditions proposed to enable operations to be managed in such a way as to minimise the potential impact on the character of the rural area and surrounding properties. I'm happy to answer any questions the panel may have and support the officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Willis. Members, questions? Ms. Faxter?
Thank you. Daniel, just remind me, does the dust management plan include a complaints process and appropriate formage? Okay.
Yeah, so the last page of the dust management plan has the form, and then the licensed standard operations will have a sign at the front of the gate, which will have a mobile on there as well. So it's clear direct contact.
Okay, thank you. And if this were to move towards an approval with the conditions as recommended by the Shire, other than condition 17, are you content with all of the other conditions?
Our client, there are a few conditions in the recommendation from officers that our clients not overly comfortable with, but we happily accept the recommendation from officers and look forward to working with them, particularly on the implementation of the conditions.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, just to clarify, it was just regarding, there's a condition in here about upgrading Skippings Road with 100 mil of gravel for the extent. We have to meet on site with the Shire engineers to work out exactly what that scope looks like.
Okay, thanks.
Just in terms of conditions, can you just clarify what you are seeking in relation to condition 17?
It's here.
I'll try and
I just thought it'd be useful to share it so everyone can see what's proposed.
So we're proposing dust management plan, obviously dated, which is the amended dust management plan, being implemented to the satisfaction of the Shire of Capel.
Okay. So just to be clear, are you proposing the current condition 17 is deleted?
Correct.
And replaced with what's in red? What about those other dot points?
So the incorporation of baseline data and ongoing monitoring, the details to management measures to minimize, particularly the baseline and ongoing monitoring. So effectively having a dust monitor on the boundary is problematic for our client, particularly because the neighbouring property has the large paddocks that are open and horses running around, and the westerly in the afternoon is going to trigger the noise logger on the boundary. So the reason we haven't the dust logger. So the reason that these conditions are problematic, it doesn't reflect the actual updated dust management plan with the provisions that we've included.
Okay. The question, really, I don't propose to go through all those dot points, but the reference to the revised dust management plan, I can understand. Are you saying you have a difficulty with the dot points as well?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so our request would be the dust management plan as we've submitted, and we're happy, and that's the condition to enforce the dust management plan.
Doesn't say that.
Okay. So I just want to be clear about what the request. Did you make a comment that the Shire officers support the revised condition?
Yes, so I spoke with Bob's online, I spoke with Bob afterwards, and we had a conversation around this. This was obviously the one that was there before, and he said, yes, we're comfortable with a standard condition around a dust management plan to implement it.
We can obviously clarify that with Bob later on. The issue of wind strength in this location has been raised. Did you say someone from Herring Store is here? In terms of,
Polls online.
Yeah. Okay. The question was just a response to the issue of whether the actual assumptions about wind velocity and direction are appropriate based on the EPA guidelines. So is someone from your team able to respond?
Paul, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Very faintly. You'll need to speak up, please.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No.
There we go. Yes, look, the wind speeds of 4 meters a second are actually reflective of the predictive noise modelling that gives the highest noise propagation conditions, or effectively the worst case in that situation. Higher winds, which may occur there more regularly, actually tend to mask the noise levels and not propagate to those sort of worst case conditions. So you'd actually have effectively less noise emissions from the site at higher speeds than that.
So can you explain that again? So the stronger the winds, the less impact.
Yeah, so there's an optimum sort of propagation condition, and it's actually reasonably low wind speeds, or what would be termed in the EPA guidelines as 4 meters a second. So we model to that and assess to that noise level. How often it occurs on site might be irregular, and you might actually get higher higher wind speeds. However, under those conditions, the noise levels are actually less.
Okay.
Sorry, Tony, to clarify, so acoustically, more wind means there's a higher noise from an ambience level, but then from a dust management plan, higher winds causes more concern. So I think the two, although
it's actually about propagation of noise. So the highest noise propagation conditions. So imagine cool sort of mornings where you can hear things at a distance. They're actually at lower wind speeds. At higher wind speeds, when you're out listening to things, the wind masks it and it doesn't propagate the noise. There's sort of they're two separate conditions almost. One's a masking effect and one's a propagation of noise.
Okay, all right, I understand that. The other question I had, Daniel, was around the issue of buffers has been raised by a couple of the submitters, and this proposition that it requires at least 1,000 metres buffer to a sensitive receptor. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, sure. So the separation guidelines is not 1,000 metres. The EPA separation guidelines document talks between 300 and 500, and if it talks about, it's not a buffer, it's a recommended separation distance. If any application is closer than that distance, then the expectation is on the proposal to demonstrate very clearly how it doesn't provide any adverse amenity impact, particularly around dust and noise. And then any proposal that's located within closer than the 300 to 500 recommended distance, the expectation then is that there's a higher level of management associated with those operations.
Okay. Panel members, any other questions of Mr. Lewis? Councillor McCleary?
Yeah, probably along the same lines as you, Chair. It's more about, once we're getting all this data about noise management, dust management, and those sorts of things, in section 17, if you're saying you've already addressed them, surely that just ticks off those points and they wouldn't need to be withdrawn. So I'm not sure where you're getting at why you need to withdraw those conditions and put in an amendment there. The other thing with earth buns, there was a bit of a comment about they'll have to be built and seeded prior to commencement of any extraction, but it sounds like in the reading of the documents, you're using the stripping of the soil to create the earth buns. Am I correct in that?
Am I able to answer both questions? So just your first question, Councillor McCleary. So the concern around condition 17 is particularly around having a dust logger sitting on the boundary, because the dust logger, the concerns is around the dust logger being triggered by surrounding dusty environment, particularly the western neighbour. That's why we've opted with the management measures within the dust management plan. To answer your second question around the topsoil strip and the bund, so you're correct in that the bunding will be created by the removal of the topsoil. However, how that works practically is that the water truck soaks the entire stage. They then do a strip and the water truck soaks it again, so that at no given point in which operations are occurring is the material dry. It's dampened after the water truck goes past. So it's constantly getting wet, similar to any kind of civil operations.
Right, so going back on the dust logger, have you done any monitoring of the dust presented from the neighbouring sites prior to the development, or are you making that as a visual assessment?
Yeah, so it is a visual assessment. So over the summer period, it's visually observed that dust is moving. We haven't put a dust logger out there to pick up the level of dust coming across our boundary.
Okay. With the buns, have you looked at other materials that could be put on? Because probably not really a planning thing, but down near Bustleton, I know Luca, one of the sand mining companies, has placed a whole lot of hay bales on top of buns to attenuate dust and noise.
At this stage, no, we haven't looked at putting hay as a bund. However, that is certainly an option that can be used. It just practically, in order to have a managed topsoil when it's stripped before excavation, needs to be managed, and we felt that having it in a bund acoustically is the best way, because that kills two birds with one stone, so to speak. But if the panel decides that a different material such as hay would be better, we'd have to consider that. I do note that the dust management plan allows for flexibility, particularly around incorporating different elements for that bund. But to answer the question directly, no, we haven't considered hay in this particular instance.
I think that answer's okay, because those sorts of things are more into the technical decisions, which would rely on the Shire of Capel to address when the officers of Shire of Capel. I did have one more question. In reference to noise, are you intending to do a verification noise readings after you established everything on site?
There's no, as the DA is framed, there's no obligation for that to happen, but that can certainly happen. It is the expectation. Our modelling says we comply, but at any given time, we have to comply with the noise regulations. So if there's any breach in that sense of the noise regulations, the operator has to immediately stop works and rectify that. So if particularly the Shire officers in their annual reporting, that's probably something else to note. The extractive industry licence has various conditions on it, and if the Shire is wanting that to be audited on a yearly basis, that can also happen.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Cleary. No. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Ferguson, Capel Shire. It seems to me that your assertion that the dust arising from the neighbour's property is a bit slightly provocative. But having said that, you're basing it on an anecdotal observation and not on any actual recording. So I think your proposition to not put a dust monitor on that location or near that location needs to be explained. Could you please explain that?
Yeah, so the trigger, so it's probably good to explain what the dust monitor does. So when the dust monitors...
I don't need a technical descriptor, just why you believe it's not justified. And indeed, if it's not justified in that location, where would you put it?
So we don't believe it's justified because of the management measures we put within the dust management plan.
That's not answering the question, with all due respect.
Yeah, please repeat the question so I can...
The question is, where would you locate the dust monitor if the adjoining boundary to the west is not suitable? That was a proposition you made, not mine.
We wouldn't locate a dust monitor on site.
I'll address that during the general discussion, but let's just say I find it mildly surprising that that's your response. The other thing is, in this condition 17, I can see that possibly one of the dot points that the may well be subject to deletion, arguably, but I can't see anything in there that shouldn't be a requirement of the conditions of operation or commencement of operation. And the desire to delete it in its entirety in its current form and implement to the satisfaction of Capel of Shire of Capel, I think leaves it too wide open. I think it's a reasonable condition, given that the concerns which will come to when we address the issue in particular. And I don't understand, or maybe I do understand, but I want to say publicly, I don't understand why you'd be rather keen to delete all those dot points. Perhaps you'd like to explain.
Sure. Sorry, Councillor, is there a question in?
Yes, why do they want to delete it?
Okay.
Is it okay if we just
Yes.
run through? So the first, we've touched on the baseline and ongoing monitoring. That just relates to having a dust monitor on the boundary. We've touched on that. Details management measures to mitigate dust. Those management measures are detailed already in the dust management plan. There's nothing further apart from hydro mulch or water that will dampen dust in this situation. Demonstrates best practice and details the methods to be used for all airborne particulates attenuation. Again, that's been addressed through mediation. Incorporates monitoring to determine the size and composition of particulates. No dust can cross the boundary. So we don't believe that, along with the dust monitor on the boundary, is not something that our client is comfortable doing. And I should clarify here, if our client felt that by operating within winter, particularly within that stage over a short period of time, was appropriate, but if the panel considers that the dust monitor has to be on site, we'd request that it's only on site for those stage 1 and 2, not for the whole operations, because that causes problems down the track for us. We're on the eastern side and it doesn't relate to us and the Shire gets notified, etc. Point 5, provides for continuous improvement in the dust management plan. That's in there. There's a particularly in line 5, and there's a dust complaints register. The intent is that that gets revised continually. And then details complaint response procedures. Again, that's in the dust management plan. So apart from the actual monitor on the boundary, that condition doesn't really reflect what's been agreed and discussed at mediation.
Again, through your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, so in other words, if we were to adopt your particular revised condition 17, it would delete, and this is what you've actually sought to do, is to delete the dot point incorporating baseline ongoing monitoring, in other words, a dust monitor. So you don't envisage in your negotiations with Shire of Capel that they would require you to have a dust monitor. Thank you.
Just a point of clarification. Mr. Lewis has referred to mediation a number of times. First comment about mediation is that it's supposed to be confidential and it's non-binding. The process of mediation was not about agreeing to particular documents. It was about agreeing to the documentation that needed to be provided additionally to justify reconsideration requests. So it's important to understand that neither SAT nor the representatives through mediation actually agreed to any conditions or any of the reports currently before the panel. So I think it's important clarification.
I may have one more question.
Of course.
I know I'm very presumptuous, but you talk about the monitoring of the dust and the implementation of on-site procedures should there be a dust issue arise. That presumes, of course, that occurs during working hours. So what happens to Saturday afternoon and Sundays if you get a strong wind, willy-willy, whatever, which causes great dust agitation from the work site? Not necessarily from the stabilised bunds, that's another issue. But so what do you do then?
Yeah, so there are two parts to that. So the landowner, landowner will always be on site. And then there's the operator's obligation. So in a scenario where on a Saturday afternoon wind blows, the expectation is there will be a phone call to the operator immediately, because the number will be on the fence, and the operator needs to rectify that immediately.
So that'll be in the conditions.
Correct. That's part of the dust management plan that's proposed.
Okay. And also I raised an issue with respect to the dust on the road. Now, even though it's going to be reshedded, fine. That's going to be widened, fine. But there's 96 movements a day proposed of a vehicle that's prescribed as being up to, and I can't say that'll be always the case, but from what I understand, what I would call a double bogey road train, looking at the classification that you've nominated. So that's, 60 tonne moving down the road. Some of them, half of those will be empty, of course, but let's say 48 of them, we're moving down the road with 60 tonne on board. And there would be no doubt creation of significant dust arising from that. So how do you endeavour to remediate that in a general sense?
So just for clarification, Skippings Road's not a RAV rated road. So our operator will only be able to run a 19 metre single. It won't be able to do a double. So it'll only be a maximum payload of 20 tonne. Notwithstanding what happens on this site and our various other sites is that the butter truck will run on site, wet the operations, wet the haulage route, and then also wet Skippings Road. So
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members, any other questions of Mr. Lewis? No, thank you, Mr. Lewis. We now move to the Shire officers. Bob, you're there to answer questions?
Yes, if you can hear me, yes, I am.
Okay. Before we get into questions, did you want to make any general comments about the application?
Sure. In general terms, the proposal is very similar to what was originally put up. It does reduce the area of the extraction and it does introduce additional controls. So in dealing with dust and noise. So the recommendation is essentially the same. Last time there was support from DWER and Health Department in relation to the dust and noise issue, and now they've added additional controls to address those. So yeah, the recommendation is essentially the same as last time.
Okay, thank you. Before you move to questions, did you want to make a comment about the proposed change to condition 17?
Sure. Effectively, the dust management plan and the new staging treatments will reduce will address the concerns about dust from the Shire's point of view, having regard to the previous Health Department's advice, which said that there was no health issues relating to the dust. So this has added additional controls since last time. So it seems a reasonable approach.
So just to clarify, you're saying you're happy with the applicant's revised condition 17?
That is correct. Because a number of things, the treatment of stages 1 and 2 and the time of year on which they're going to operate that reduces the risk of dust.
Okay. Members, question of the Shire's officers? Councillor McCleary?
Yeah, thanks. That's probably a bit of a repeat. I'm just thinking if condition 17 was left in place, are you saying that you would approve it because the dust management plan addresses the concerns?
That is correct, yes. In addition, I should mention condition 18 does allow for an annual audit to be undertaken, and there is opportunity for compliance to take place as well during its operation.
Thank you, Councillor McCleary. I did pose to the applicant this issue of the EPA setback requirements. Did you have a comment around that?
No, I just confirmed that the applicant's position would be similar to my interpretation of how those guidelines apply, and which if you're a reduced setback from the operations, you need to justify how that won't impact in terms of, in this case, dust and noise, of which the applicant has demonstrated.
Okay, thank you. Members, last opportunity for questions to Shire's officers. not, thank you, Bob. So we will now move to the item. Members, is someone prepared to move the RAR recommendation? Ms. Baxter? Is there a seconder for that? In which case I will second it. Ms. Baxter, did you want to talk to the motion?
I will, thank you, presiding member. I was present when this application came before a development panel assessment in August last year, and I did move to support it at the time. I was of the opinion then that the matters raised in relation to setbacks in the environment, including noise and dust, were acceptable or could be managed under a conditional approval. I'm pleased to see that those matters have now been largely addressed by the proponent, which now gives rise to a compliant application with a recommendation from the Shire for conditional approval. As noted previously, the land has been identified by the proponent as containing sufficient sand of a high enough quality to make extraction commercially viable. The proposed use is categorised as discretionary in the rural zone, therefore it could be contemplated subject to satisfying objectives and policy requirements. I note the concerns that were raised previously in the submissions where people are generally opposed to land uses that they perhaps didn't foresee. There are, however, a wide range of land uses that are generally permissible on rural zoned land, not just cropping, grazing and the keeping of animals. In addition, a resource needs to be taken from where it is. Having regard to the assessment in the Responsible Authority report, the updated information by the proponent and the invitation by the State Administrative Tribunal to reconsider the previous decision, I am prepared to support the proposal development and will vote accordingly. I do, however, foreshadow some changes to some of the conditions. They are mainly typographical and grammatical, but I would also like to address condition 17 at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Ms. Baxter. As I indicated, I will support the current application. Since the application was previously refused, there's been significant additional information that has been provided by the applicant, and I won't go into what they are, but significant, including the acoustic report, and modification of the proposal itself. There's been reference to the rural zone and whether it meets the objectives. Probably fair to say that most of the dot points it may not comply with, but the scheme objectives does provide for other uses and which can be demonstrated to be compatible. And my view is this proposal can be demonstrated to be compatible. It's within basic raw materials policy area, and the intent of that is to make use of the basic raw materials where it meets the objectives. And my view is that it does. There's been significant discussion about environmental impacts. The work provided by the applicant and the advice from DUA, DBCA doesn't reflect any significant environmental impact. The issue of clearing has been raised of native vegetation, even though there isn't significant vegetation on the site. Irrespective of that, DUA is the responsible authority for determining clearing. If a clearing permit is required, that agency will require it and then assess it through its guidelines. Probably the final matter I wanted to raise is the issue of setback. It's been indicated through the RAR that the EPA guidelines is 300 to 500 as a guideline subject to the specifics of a proposal. And like all guidelines, that's what we need to consider, the merits of specific proposals. I'm also very conscious that neither DUA nor public health have raised any significant issues to this proposal. And through the submitters, there's been issues around public health and environmental impacts and amenity impacts. Those agencies that have carriage of those issues don't seem to have an issue. So on that basis, I think the application has merit and I'm prepared to support it.
Mr. Chairman, am I able to move an alternative motion? I've missed my opportunity possibly, but I would seek your indulgence.
You have. What I was going to say, you can foreshadow an alternative. What I was going to ask whether there's anyone opposed to the current motion and wanting to speak to it.
I do, and I'd like to foreshadow a motion.
Yep.
I'd like to foreshadow that we adopt the alternative motion of refusal, and I'd like to speak to that.
Okay. Well, we have a current motion which we have to deal with. Councillor McCleary, you've gone off screen. Did you want to? Are you opposed to the motion and wanting to speak to it?
I think I'm back now. I just flicked the switch on the top of my computer. I should be able to see my face now. I have some concerns in relation to it, and I must admit, in a planning sense, the item has merit, but there's a whole lot of things that are overriding in the mainly around the dust and noise issues that have been commented on. I think it puts some challenges in the proponents. If this gets up, it puts some challenges to the proponent and the Shire staff to ensure that compliance is duly met in all the general conditions that are down. I think I'm not comfortable with changing 17, mainly because I think from the commentary by the proponent and by the staff, they're saying that it's already met. So why change it anyway? That's my only thoughts on that.
Thank you, Councillor McCleary. Ms. Baxter, you have foreshadowed changes to conditions.
I have. I have a number of just small typographical and grammatical things which I would like to go through should this ultimately move towards an approval. But I will also foreshadow some significant changes to some of the other conditions. Which would you like me to deal with first?
Perhaps if they're administrative grammatical corrections,
yes,
we probably don't need to deal with them, and we just provide those.
Do you want me to go through them though?
Yes, go through them.
All right, and then I'd like to come back to the more salient conditions. All right, should this move to an approval, condition 4, in the second sentence of condition 4, where it says commencement of the subsequent extraction, I would change the word "the" to "each." So it would read commencement of each subsequent extraction stage. That would be a sort of grammatical typographical change to condition 4. Condition 5, it's probably just a bit of an addition into condition 5, where I'd probably include the words, after the words attached approved plans, the words and supporting documentation as dated, marked and stamped by the Shire. Sorry, and supporting documentation, correct. So just an addition of wording into condition 5. Now, condition 6, actually, I might just come back to that one. That's a tad more complicated because there are a few little typos I'd like to get to. They are in condition 13. So where the word says of a bond or guarantee in pursuant, I think the words there need to be pursuant to the Shire schedule of fees and charges. That was condition 13. Condition 16, just correcting the type, the spelling of the word licensed with a C. It makes it consistent with the conditions before it, and the same with condition 17. Although I'll come to that as well. Condition 29 just really needs a typographical error in the capitalisation of the word Shire in condition 29. I think that was the bulk of the kind of typographical, grammatical type conditions.
Ms. Baxter, as a seconder, I'm prepared to accept those changes as part of the substantive motion.
Thank you.
So
Right.
you did say you propose more substantial changes.
I do. Okay. Now, condition 6 and condition 28 were actually previously submitted in the previous recommendation that came before us. I proposed to sort of amalgamate condition 6 with condition 28 with a little bit of additional wording. So where condition 6 reads, the maximum pit floor depth shall be a minimum of 0.8 above the current maximum groundwater level in brackets MGL. I would put the words there, which include the words there, which is to say, which is to be maintained for the life of the extraction activities, and no dewatering works are to be undertaken. And then delete condition 8. The reason for that is because condition 8 kind of appears a little bit out of context. We're dealing with the maximum pit floor depth in condition 6. And I think it's not unreasonable to sort of amalgamate those two bits together. It keeps the subject matter together in that condition. So it would be delete condition 8 and therefore renumber accordingly. It would also adjust the
Sorry, Ms. Baxter, just
Sure.
to clarify, are you suggesting the whole of condition 8 is deleted?
well, yes, because I would be including the words which is to be maintained for the life of the extraction activity, which is basically what condition 8 sort of says.
But doesn't condition 8 require?
Sorry, condition 28.
28,
My apologies,
okay.
28.
Yeah,
28,
that's
sorry.
a lot to delete.
Yep, 28, yep. 28, my apologies there. Yep. So condition 28, basically, more or less in its entirety, gets included in condition 6.
Okay.
Keeps that subject matter
Okay.
together.
So just for the other members' benefit, we're looking to delete condition 28 and insert words into condition 6.
Yep. So
and maybe clarify those.
That's
what
right. So-
conditions are.
Okay, so the words after in brackets MGL, the words that would go, which is to be maintained for the life of the extraction activities, and no dewatering works are to be undertaken.
Is there a seconder for that motion? I'm happy to second that.
Okay, so
Ms.
then
Baxter, did you
condition.
want to talk to that motion?
Sure, I suppose I've already mentioned the reasons for my reasoning and thinking there. It combines the subject matter together. Now that would mean a slight adjustment to probably the numbering of the advice note, if that can be dealt with kind of administratively, because it refers, advice note 13 refers to condition 28. That could probably say in respect of condition 6, I guess.
Okay, we should
If that can be just
include that
picked
as
up in-
well. Advice note, what number was it?
Well, it's advice note 13 at the moment.
Yeah. At the moment, that's fine.
Okay,
All right.
alrighty.
Is anyone wanting to speak against that motion? No? In which case I'm going to put that. All those in favour? Opposed? The motion's carried. Ms. Baxter?
All right, I would now like to deal with condition 17. Okay. I think the points that were previously included in this condition, both in the RIO that came before the RDAP in August and the ones that were sort of theoretically erroneously include. I take the applicant's point that they think that they have been dealt with in the dust management plan, but I'd like to construct a condition that I think might give the panel and the Shire a little bit more comfort. And that would be that the condition would say the dust management plan prepared by MBS Environmental for the subject land, dated 10th of November 2023, revision 1, shall be implemented in its entirety, including, if requested by the Shire, the testing and monitoring of dust to the satisfaction of the Shire of Capel. There have been concerns raised about whether a monitor is required or not. I think how this condition could be dealt with is, and there have been concerns expressed by one of the councillors that perhaps a monitor needs to be placed on one of the boundaries. This gives the Shire of Capel the opportunity to do that should there be any noise, any dust complaint raised by anybody in actual fact. So it includes that for a bit of comfort. It says that the dust management plan shall be implemented in its entirety, the amended one, including, if requested by the Shire, the testing and monitoring of dust to the satisfaction of the Shire of Capel. So I put that as an alternative wording to condition 17.
Okay. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor McCleary, you're seconding the motion?
Correct.
Ms. Baxter, did you want to talk about?
Well, I think I've already sort of explained the rationale for that. Deals with the concerns expressed by the community on the dust, the possibility that there might need to be a monitor, but it certainly leaves it up to the Shire of Capel as a result of any complaints lodged, or in its view, there is a need for the testing and monitoring of dust.
Thank you. Councillor McCleary, did you want to talk to that?
Yes, I did. Thanks, Chair. Look, totally agree with the motion as it is now that we do need monitoring there. I think the argument that it's difficult, well, that can be addressed as whatever gets presented at the time that it presents a result of some way, and I think it gives diligence or due diligence to the process of monitoring dust escaping the site. So I think that's a good inclusion.
Members opposed to the motion?
I'd like to speak against it. I do accept in principle that it's a much more thoughtful proposition than the one proposed by the proponent, and it does provide the opportunity for dust monitoring, but it presumes that the council staff, Shire of Capel council staff, have the appetite to do so, and indeed have the resources to present to the proponent the requirements for compliance. Now, I don't want to get into the detail, but regional councils like Capel struggle with compliance due to staffing issues and matters such as that. I would rather see this actually be proscribed in the motion itself, that the dust monitoring be part of the condition of compliance rather than it be subject to the really the administrative staff, the staff of council to do it. Now, it's possible always, of course, that a councillor can bring a notice of motion to council to try and get something done particularly, but it's not a very attractive way of dealing with it. I would rather see that this actually be incorporated in the conditions right from the onset, so that it's not actually wait till someone complains. We actually know what the baseline is and we can deal with it on an ongoing basis. So that's why I oppose it. I think it's an improvement over what was originally proposed by the proponent, but I don't think it goes quite far enough. And I would urge possibly the mover to consider that option.
Okay. Before I comment on it, Lindsay, are you able just to read it out again, please?
Okay, so it would say the dust management plan prepared by MBS Environmental for the subject land, in brackets dated 10th of November 2023, revision 1, being implemented in its entirety, including, if requested by the Shire, the testing and monitoring of dust to the satisfaction of the Shire of Capel.
So I must admit, I have I can understand the applicant's position in terms of wanting to have that change. I'm also conscious that the proximity of this proposal to a sensitive receptor, and my view about that is that in order to support this, the monitoring needs to be probably greater than it normally applied. So I accept that the revised dust management plan is a comprehensive document. These additional dot points, I think, go to addressing the concerns of some of the surrounding residents. So I think on that basis, I would be prepared to accept the change in condition 17 to make reference to the revised dust management plan. But I think those dot points or dot point numbers are actually important in demonstrating that this has been approached in a very considered and diligent manner. So I would probably, on balance, not support the revision. Ms. Baxter, you're able to
Okay,
close comment on.
Sure, thank you. I guess I think the Shire of Capel, in administering this condition, can seek advice, and whether it needs to seek that advice from an independent government agency in relation to dust, it can do that for advice in order to determine whether in fact it needs to, deal with the issue of testing and monitoring dust. So I think it's got the capability of doing that. I do appreciate it's a small Shire. Presumably they do have an environmental person on board as well. At this stage, I stand by the wording that I've proposed for condition 17. Should an alternative condition 17 be put forward, again, depending on whether this application even gets to an approval, I'm prepared to consider that.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'm going to put that motion to the vote. All those in favour?
Me.
So Ms. Baxter, Councillor Cleary. Those opposed? The motion's lost. I would have propose a motion to change condition 17. So the reference to the dust management plan is the current submitted dust management plan, which what's the date of that? It's the 10th of November 2023. Sorry, Tony, could I just ask for a clarification? What I thought we were voting on then was my condition 17, and myself and Councillor McCleary appeared to vote for condition 17. Is that what was put? Yes.
All right, so we've both voted, but it was 2-2.
Yeah, and I have cast a vote.
All right, thank you. Okay.
So it's lost.
Yes, all righty.
So I will move a motion to modify condition 17 so it refers to the correct dust management plan, but in all other respects, we'll leave points 1 to 6. I know some of those are repeated in the dust management plan, but I don't think there's any problem with the fact that there's repetition between what's expected and what's in the dust management plan. So I'll put that. Is someone prepared to second? Councillor Ferguson? I don't propose to make any further comment. I think it just reflects the current dust management plan. Is anyone opposed to it, wanting to speak to it? No? In which case I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Ms. Baxter, did you have other changes?
No, I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay. Members, were there any other potential changes to conditions? No? In which case, we're going to go back to the substantive motion, which was moved by Ms. Baxter. Ms. Baxter, did you want to make any closing remarks?
I'll just sum up, I suppose, very briefly.
Can I speak against it? This is a closing remark.
No,
I can't speak
no,
against it.
you've already spoken against it.
No, I didn't. Not against this motion. I spoke against the dust management motion, but I didn't speak against this.
You said you were opposed and you wanted to offer an alternative.
Yes.
But Ms. Baxter, before you do that, I'm happy for you to reiterate your position.
Well,
Councillor
if with the indulgence of Ms. Baxter.
That's fine, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Look, I actually have fundamental issues with this whole proposal, and I've come to it without any baggage because I wasn't involved in the previous council determinations, staff reports on this matter, or the earlier DAP meeting. But it comes down to, in my view, some fundamental issues. The dust we've just discussed and tried to deal with in a way that is relatively convenient, and I take issue with the issue being raised by the proponent that dust emanates from the adjoining property. That's an argument that's totally irrelevant to the origins of the dust on this side, this extraction site. And so I actually think that the distance between the adjoining property and the extractive site is totally unacceptable. Totally unacceptable. I couldn't make it any plainer. 130 metres or thereabouts, composed to a recommended distance of somewhere 300, 500, 1,000, depends which document you read. And so I actually cannot see how, in the fullness of time, that issue can be ameliorated to any consistency. Maybe on an occasional basis, but not on any consistency. So I have a very serious issue with that. With respect to noise, well, I've actually found, reading the documents as best as I can, I'm not a noise engineer, of course, but nonetheless, the issue that the ambient noise was almost the same as what the prospective noise during operation does seem entirely inconsistent to me. I can't imagine how that is. The site is a rural, backwater in effect, and there's little or no background noise other than, the warbling magpies. So, I don't understand that particular issue. Yes, when the wind blows, the noise raises, of course, because of a bit of background, but by and large not. And then we talk about the land use. I mean, the council's planning for the issue, and it's planning number 8, local planning scheme number 8. Well, I do note that the staff have marked them all off as compliant, subject to this, subject to this, subject to this. That assumes, of course, that in a decade, the site may well be remediated. But in the meantime, there's a decade of intrusion and a non-agricultural pursuit being undertaken. Now, it may be, and there's condition, the proponent conditions the ultimate outcome to some extent, that is the prospect of the grasses revegetating and re-nurturing and so forth. And so I find that actually contrary to the Capel local plan number 8 regarding this particular matter. We then take account of the actual planning document in regard to the water table. Now, documents that the community should be expected to be able to rely upon says that extraction is to be taken to no greater than 2 metres from the water table. Now, in this case, the proponent put up a proposal that they wanted to do it to within 500 millimetres. DUR has come back and said, well, we think 0.8 of a metre is acceptable. Well, I can't see, aside from their actual advice that is the case, how we can actually then act contrary to a planning document that's prescribed in the council local laws. And I don't understand why we would then expect the adjacent neighbours to be relaxed about the fact that it's going to be contrary to what they might expect to happen. So I actually have a great issue with that. I actually think if this is approved, it should be approved on the basis that they actually don't extract below 2 metres from the water table. I mean, 0.8 might be marginally satisfactory, but it gives little or no allowance for error or for the prospect of difficult revegetation in the future. And then we actually come down to the amenity of the neighbourhood. Well, there's in common law from the 1860s or something, a very learned judge said that residents are entitled to their quiet enjoyment. And he meant that figuratively, not just literally. And this is actually a profound intrusion into a regional location that should not have reasonably, in any foreshadowed way, expected that this type of activity would land on their doorstep. And so I actually find that reading through the detailed documents and the submissions received, that I've had great difficulty in agreeing to it at all. I begrudgingly agree to the conditions that we've accepted in terms of number 17 and the need to have it more effective noise monitoring, but I cannot agree to the broader proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Ms. Baxter, would you like to close debate, closing comments?
Thank you. I'll just touch on the issue of separation distances. My understanding in reading the EPA's document and during my career and working life is that those distances are in the absence of any studies, any technical studies whatsoever, and that certainly a reduced separation distance can be considered, having regard to technical studies, and there have been quite a significant number of technical studies done and to be done to support this application. I appreciate that 100 odd metres doesn't appear to be far, but there are other ameliorative methods that will reduce the impact of this site. I also appreciate the emotion expressed by some of the people who submitted presentations. Other than that, I probably don't really have anything further to add. I'm prepared to support it subject to conditions, including the retention of condition 17 as recommended in the RAR. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baxter. So we have modified a few of the conditions, and we have a motion to approve subject to conditions. Those in favour? Ms. Baxter and presiding member. Those opposed? Councillor McCleary and Councillor Ferguson. The motion is carried. Yeah, just to clarify, because of presiding members cast vote. So we go through the balance of the agenda. Part C is other business. Just note that SAT applications and Supreme Court appeals are listed in the agenda papers. Item 2, general business. Members, is there any general business? So that's Neil. Oh, Councillor McCleary.
It's probably something I should take offline, not at this meeting. Or it's about the advertising of the agenda item. It's something I need to talk to the JDAP about, but not at the meeting.
Okay, thank you. And item 3, meeting closure. Thank you everyone for your time. It's been a complex matter, and I know it's been emotional for a number of the submitters, and I appreciate that the decision is probably not to many people's satisfaction, but we've made a decision based on what we consider as merit. So with that, thank you for your participation, and I declare the meeting closed at 2:39. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.